morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome everybody. Welcome to this beautiful Wednesday morning. We had a very gloomy weather in the last couple of days, and today, because you are here, we have such a fantastic weather. So cheer up. Today we are going to explore a subject I really like. And before I start, my name is Tumisa Muduke. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at the ISA. And my job today is a very simple one, is to welcome everybody, but also to appreciate our esteemed panel that we have here that is going to take us through a subject that touches most of us, that is quite topical and very relevant in everything that we do in this day and age. For the ISA, as you know, we are very passionate about innovation, one, two, about skills development, but also supporting the industry and making sure that we move with the times. And it is very fitting for us to be discussing, attracting young talent into the insurance industry. We are very passionate about that. And it is very fitting to have these conversations because with the advent of digital transformation, we can't avoid it. It is happening. We are not saying when and how. You are already in it, and we need to move with the times. But that also says you have machines measuring with humans these days. That is actually catalyzing everything that we do. And we have these youngsters who are technologically savvy and ready to serve the industry. And we find that we don't attract as many as we can or as we wish to into the industry. And the subject matter experts are going to sort of share great ideas and valuable information with us today. And I hope that when we part ways, we'll have picked up nuggets and some valuable information we can sort of implement in our different businesses to make sure that we attract this talent and it adds value to the future of insurance. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ayanda, who's the facilitator today, and she will obviously introduce the panelists and take it from there. And good luck and have fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tumisang, and good morning to everyone. Firstly, I'd like to welcome you to this great event. I think it's really necessary for all of us to have these kind of conversations in insurance, especially because insurance in our market is, well, as a market, it's seen as something for old people, or it's something that's not with the current times. So I think probably maybe that is why young talent is skeptical or doesn't know more. So I hope that through this discussion we can then find some ideas of how to attract them. My name is Ayanda Malele. I am going to be your facilitator for the day. I have been in the insurance sector for a bit, but I have a YouTube channel and I talk about insurance. So this is going to be fun for me to talk about insurance further. Before anything else, before I introduce the esteemed guests in the front here, I'd like to just give you a rundown of what's going to happen today. So obviously time now is 9:20, so we started a little bit late. The aim is to run it over 3 hours. We're going to have 45 minutes at a time and then a 15-minute break so that everyone can stretch and get coffee. So we'll do 2 segments where the panel will discuss and talk and answer some questions. And then in the last segment, after the last break, then we're going to have a conversation between you and the panelists to then ask and comment even further in this discussion. So yes, okay. So instead of introducing these people, I'm sure you know a lot of them. I call them superstars of the insurance game. I'm sure their faces are very familiar. We've got Beyonce in the room. We've got Jay-Z, maybe a Puff Daddy. But firstly, I'd like to introduce Bukhosi, who is an exec head for business risk solution at Olia, and he's also the current IIG president and the Young Insurance Professionals Africa winner for 2023. Next to him, I've got Marissa van der Westhuizen. She's the claims manager at I2 Special Risks, but she's done so much for the insurance industry and has dabbled in a couple of interesting things that pertain to young people. And then next to her, I've got Christopher, who's the head of claims and liabilities and salvage at Bright Insurance. He's also the winner of the Insurance Apprentice for 2023. And then lastly, next to him, I've got Babalo, who is the Financial Solutions Manager at Munich Re. And she is also a Mail and Guardian Top 200 Young South Africans for 2020. So we've got a very great panel. I'd like you first to give them a round of applause. Before we start this conversation of attracting the youth in the insurance industry, instead of going through their bios, I'd like for each of the panelists to just tell us how they got started, how they got attracted to the insurance industry, what their road has been like to where they are now. So we'll start with you, Bokosi.
Studied insurance and risk management at tertiary education, and I would love to tell one of those cool stories where I say I knew I was going to be in risk management in primary and high school, but that's not the case. I really wanted to be an architect. I was interested in things to do with aesthetics and lots of other cool things, drawing, putting things in order, etc. And a lot of decisions that I made along the way then pushed me towards business sciences. And the coolest thing at that point in business sciences was to be a chartered accountant. It's really the only thing that we knew. I didn't even know that you had actuaries. I didn't know that you could do econometrics. I didn't know that you could become a financial risk manager, all these things, or a CFA, FRM, and all sorts. So when I was younger, were really working towards being a chartered accountant. And when I finished my A-levels, I was sitting with my mother and we were thinking to ourselves, so what do we do with your future? And at that time, she consulted some of her peers. And they say that risk management was going to be the next coolest thing. So we did applications for that. And eventually, I really found myself in this amazing industry that we're in today. That's a summarized version. If I tell you the whole version, we'll spend the whole day here. But what I can say, though, is it's really been an amazing journey. I call insurance as an industry a killer of ignorance. And why I say that is we get to be in touch with a lot of different industries. You need an understanding as well of what each industry does, the processes, so that we can assist them from a risk management as well as insurance perspective. So in a nutshell, I walked into insurance. I didn't know it when I was still in primary school, but I am happy that I'm here today.
Thank you, Bokosi. Marissa, please, can you share your story?
Good morning, everyone. This is working great. So I studied law after school, and I'd love to say I've got a very noble reason for studying law. But my dad made the recommendation, and he knows me pretty well, and it worked out well for me. So I ended up doing articles at a law firm just around the corner here, Cliff Decker Hofmeyer. And in these big law firms, they transfer you every 6 months to a new department. And they sent me to dispute resolution, and I thought, this is going to be a waste of my time because I don't really see myself as a litigator. And I ended up with the only practitioner who does insurance law at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer at the time. And he provided me with such great exposure to his clients from day one. On my third day of articles, I actually went to a place called Bothaville in the Free State to attend a trial there on a really mundane type of case, but just to gain that insight into the insurance world and how it facilitates the litigation process and dispute resolution, and how those two are combined, gave me incredible insight. And I was exposed to the clients from the get-go, and that gave me a little bit of an insight into the insurance world. Fast forward a couple of years, when I say a couple of years, it's probably 2. I had to make the decision as to whether I was going to stay in practice or potentially consider other options. Now, I myself am a very risk-averse type of person. So as a user of insurance, I believe in it. If I can share my risk with you, I will do it. I genuinely believe in insurance. So that led me to when I was forced to make the decision whether I was going to stay in practice or consider other options, to say I've got these wonderful relationships that I've built up with these clients, and we had a couple of conversations. I applied for a job, and that's how I landed in the insurance industry. So I have a couple of touch points as to how I landed here. I'm not one of those people who just by accident fell into the insurance industry, but I am eternally grateful to be here. In 10 days from now, I'm celebrating my 4th year in the insurance industry with my current company, i2. And it's been an incredible, incredible journey. And I'm very much looking forward to what lies ahead as well.
Thank you, Marissa. Next, we'll give it to Christopher.
Okay, so like Bukosi, I always wanted to be a pilot. I love planes, love everything aviation. And I had this conversation with my mum, and she always used to say to me, you need a degree to fall back on. And one of the things that, I grew up in an Indian township, Chatsworth in Durban. And one of the things that all of the aunties used to say to us was, you speak so well, so you'll be the perfect lawyer. And so I studied law. And and as my fallback degree, I fell in love with the law because of how systematic it is. And I did that on a part-time basis whilst working in a call center in Durban. I remember joining that call center, and I was there for a month, and I was promoted to team manager. I had zero emotional intelligence. It was the most out-of-body experience I had in my entire life. I was 21 at the time. So it was quite a crazy sort of period in my life. And I studied part-time, attended university in the evenings, completed my degree, and then moved up to Johannesburg, as everybody in KZN does. And I joined the Germiston Legal Aid Justice Center in Johannesburg, completed my articles there, and realized that though I was a good litigator, I did not want to litigate any longer. I saw a lot of things that I didn't quite agree with and thought to myself, where to from here? I then joined a random good law firm in Sandton. And after 3 months, I realized that this is where I do not want to be. And I tendered my resignation, and I joined an insurance company and was thrown into the deep end as a claims specialist, did not know what I was doing. It was the most, again, another out-of-body experience every day. And as time went on, I realized that I developed this passion for claims. I really loved what I did every single day. And I've just been in claims ever since. And obviously now I am where I am, heading up the recoveries, liabilities, and salvage department for Bright Insurance. So yeah, I've enjoyed this experience in the insurance space. I also, and then before I hand over, but the one thing I realize is that insurance actually makes the world go round. If you look at various touch points in this building or in this room, you will realize how much of this room is actually insured or was insured at some point in its life cycle. And so that's what really attracted me to this space.
Babalo?
Good morning, everybody. So I think for myself, I'm actually realizing also sitting here, I'm learning a lot from the other panelists. And one theme that I also like to touch on is my mother. Because you also mentioned my mother gave me advice, Chris mentioned my mother gave me advice. So when I was in university, in high school in grade 11, I was looking to apply for university, and the criteria I gave my mother was that I like maths and I want money. So what should I sign up for? And then she came with a whole long list of stuff, and I thought, none of them are really interesting, until she said, maybe just do accounting and then take it from there. I think based on that, I signed up to the University of the Free State to do accounting. But then when I actually passed my matric year, in that year, like around January time, I learned about actuarial science. Then went to my parents to say, actually, I want to do actuarial science, mostly because it's not necessarily just the numbers, but then there actually is a business element to it, which is something that I think it's really important skills to have, business and sales. Whether you are a numbers person or not, I think business and sales are really quite important and critical. So swapped degrees to do actuarial science. And it was quite fortunate to be in this space, because then I learned a lot from insurance. So I think similar to Bukosi as well, doing risk management, actuarial science also speaks to, I guess, the insurance space. It was modules that we did. So in terms of that, got to learn a lot about insurance. But how I got into the insurance industry, I'd like to say, really links up to the pillars of the IIG. It's about connecting, engaging, and growing. So in my second year, I'm one of those people that always puts up their hand and signs up for everything, and managed to actually get vacation work at Munich Re, where I work now. So it's really about how do you connect, how do you engage, and from that, how do you grow from the insurance industry. And so that's how I entered the insurance space. And really through that, the grow really speaks to associations like the IISA, like the IG. Because then as I got in there, my first year of working, I actually got an opportunity to go to the IIG International, which is something that's quite amazing and really shows you the diversity of the insurance space when it really comes to connecting, engaging, and growing. And I guess for today, I guess that is some of the things that I'll be talking to in terms of how do you get into that insurance space, and then how do you grow in that space towards what, I guess, from a young professional point of view, to where they would want to be at the end of the day.
No, thank you for the interesting stories. What I'm realizing is no one sat at 10 years old and said, one day I'm going to work in insurance. What I'd like to also ask from the panel is, what was your perception of insurance as a teenager? Just to understand where the youth is currently now. What was your perception of insurance?
So just for me, insurance was probably something that I thought you just need to be money savvy. So growing up, I wasn't necessarily the most money savvy person. I remember one day I was watching Oprah with my parents, and then Oprah said that as a parent, you need to show your kid your bank account so that they understand. When you say that I don't have means, oh, that's brilliant. I looked towards my dad, so show me your bank account. He's like, no way, there's absolutely no way I'm doing that. Just know that when I say you can't afford stuff, just take it as that. And I think in terms of that, when I thought about the insurance industry, it's really about that being money savvy and being able to understand that at certain points in your life, there'll be risk. And when you think about insurance, it also speaks to education. Do you have an education fund or education trust that you're saving towards the time where your child goes to university? And those are the discussions that I had with my dad. It wasn't necessarily about, here's your pocket money, you can do whatever you want. My dad was like, by the time you get to 18, I'm responsible for you. Post that, you can do whatever you want. I'm saving for you to go to university, to get a good education and a good degree, and you'll probably take it from there. But I'm probably thinking about perception, also probably from the room here. Perception, I was reading a book that says perception really is reality. If someone perceives it a certain way, it somewhat becomes reality, because then how you act and how you behave, that's what people are picking up on you. And that's really speaks to you when you get a promotion and when the doors open up. It's really based on perception. Even me sitting over here today, a lot of people look at my LinkedIn profile or my social media and have no idea what I do, especially from a student perspective. They're like, but then I saw in your profile you were traveling. I saw in your profile you're doing some content creation. I saw in your profile you're doing this. And with that perception, I really do believe that we need to be ambassadors for the insurance industry. Insurance doesn't need to be worry. And with insurance, it's you in the room over here, it's us over here. And it's the perception that we're giving. We're not giving, here I am taking pictures behind a desk taking some notes, writing some numbers. It's the perception that the insurance industry really is a part of everyday life. It's not necessarily just a 9 to 5. It's post that when you go home, do you have car insurance? Do you have property insurance? If anything were to happen to your loved ones, do you have life insurance? And those are the things that we start portraying based on the lives that we live. So I think for me, perception is that insurance really is ingrained in my DNA, and I really want to be a role model, I guess, for the next generation or for young professionals. And I think as leaders as well in this room, we do become great leaders by managing that perception. The students outside are looking at it from outside in, looking at your LinkedIn profiles once they start looking into jobs and seeing, oh, you're in the insurance industry, you work for this company, you work for that company, and based on your lifestyle, that is what is attracting them to the insurance industry.
Thank you. Chris, Vukosi, did you want to say something?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, you spoke about teenage, which is between 13 and 19. Before I was 18, 19, I had no clue about insurance, so I had no perception of what insurance is. But thinking back, we were probably exposed to certain principles of insurance through, my grandmother used to call it round, but I think it was
In South Africa.
to your Stockwells. And when you look at it, it's really a protection of people. And the highlight for us, and which I think is what was then just attached to our minds regarding Stockwells, if at the end of the year, everyone is still alive, they'll throw this party, share groceries, and that was really it. So my perception really before starting it wasn't really existent. But after being introduced to it, I was super excited about what the industry is. And what I know today about insurance is very different to how it was when I was 19, and it's not 5 years ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Vukosi. I actually wanted to throw it to you as well. Growing up in Durban as a child, did you have any knowledge or inkling of any perceptions?
So, how do I frame this? So, I didn't grow up wealthy, and so my parents' priorities, and I've said this before, is like food, shelter, education. But the one thing that my dad always did was made sure that we had insurance, and I only know this because there was a small home thing that happened. Something broke, and they were talking about, it's the insurance will come and check it out. But it was a big thing. A large part of my parents' sort of salary or income went to that. And so, my perception of insurance at that point in time was that was exactly what it is, was like this protector to my family. But it wasn't that perception wasn't present enough to make me think that I want to do this in my future. I wanted to fly planes.
So I'm gathering everyone thought it's for somebody else to do,
Yeah.
but it happens and it exists, but I'm not interested. Right. Do you have any comments, Marissa?
I'll just add, and this is maybe pre-teen, when I think I was about 10 years old, I was in grade 4, oversharing here, but it happened, life happens, I dropped my phone into the toilet. And my dad had the sense there and he was always very intentional about exposing me to real life situations and real life sort of life lessons throughout. So at the age of 10, he told me, for insurance purposes, you need to now draft an affidavit as to, what happened and whatever else. So I was there in class, told the teacher, this is what I needed to do. So, it's a really small and it's a mundane thing, and I almost feel bad mentioning it after what you've said, but, these things matter as well. To at the end of the day, we manage these perceptions by our exposure. And we need to get that exposure where in young people's lives where they don't necessarily have the parents who can teach. We've seen now here the pivotal role that parents have played in all of our lives. But where we have situations where there are young people who don't have parents who are able to teach these financial savvy aspects to their kids, that we can bring that to them. and thereby expose them to the good news stories that insurers are responsible for. And I think that goes a long way to manage the perception, because you can get all sorts of posts on Twitter about rejected claims and all of that, but the good news doesn't spread as fast as the bad news. But that's something that we actively need to pursue in terms of, sharing the good news stories with the young people out there.
No, thank you so much. I wanted the audience to also just get to know you a little bit better and get to know your story, but it's always quite interesting for people's journeys and what led them to where they are. And I can see that as a child, no one woke up and said, Mom, I really want to be an actuarial scientist when I grow up. I really want to do this. Or Mom, I really want to be an insurance agent. So this is going to my next question, and I'll start with you, Vukosi, on so what do you think are the challenges? Now that we've spoken about all we've spoken about, what are the challenges that are limiting younger people from joining or wanting to join the insurance sector?
Firstly, I read a statistic that say that the US alone by 2026 is going to have lost about 400,000 people within the insurance space, which is going to be very difficult to replace based on what the article said. And I also read some stats, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, where they did some research, and the research was saying that about 47% of young people that were interviewed had no clue that they could use insurance as a career and a stepping stone to an amazing life. And about 23% of them said they would never work in the insurance sector. And when I was thinking about it, just realized that we could probably split it into 3 main themes. The first one being mentorship, and the second one being the people aspect as well as skills development, and then the last one really speaking to issues of innovation and technology.
All right. Would any of you guys agree?
Yes, definitely. I think there are a lot of challenges within the industry, mostly linked to the first question that you asked around perception and what you mentioned. The bad news spreading faster than the good news. But I think with the pillars that Vukosi mentioned, I really like the one where you say mentorship. I think I'm here today, like I said, someone got me a space or a seat into the insurance space. And mentorship really is about how are we paving it forward for the next generation. Mentorship really is about how do you look at someone's development plan? How do you sit with them, create, I guess, the goals that they need to aspire for? And then how do you assist them in terms of closing the gaps to get to where they want to be? From a mentorship perspective, there are many pillars in terms of showing an interest in the person, showing an interest in the industry, getting involved. Attending events like this really means how do you get involved, how do you bring the next person along, and how do you inspire the next generation to be involved and to make a difference. We learn a lot of skill sets within this industry, and then the question is how do we use the skill sets for the bigger good? It's not about, I guess, approving a claim or writing a quotation. It's about the skills that we learn here and how do we use them for the wider good or the greater impact of our country.
Going back to the perception as well, and noting challenges, would you then say that because there either is a bad perception of the insurance sector or there's no perception at all, and this is why no one actually wants to get in the industry, is that one of the challenges?
I think as humans, and I'm going to start there because I'm really into like psychology, and as humans we have a negative bias. And so whatever feeds that negative bias is something that you'll tend to focus on. And if you consider it, when you are going about your day, your daily day, and you are just like having your random thoughts in your mind, you would notice that most of your thoughts are around protection, because your brain wants to protect itself. So you'll look at things in a negative way. Like already when I got into this room, I was like, okay, there's the exit. There's only one exit. How are all of us going to get out of here? If something were to happen. But that's how we are. And so as companies, specifically as insurance companies, you have to cater to people's positive bias. You can't feed that negative bias. And so, like Melissa said, it's very, very important. All of these like bad stories catch fire. It's like a felt fire, especially on Twitter. And so, as insurance companies and as people as well, you need to control those narratives, those negative biases that people will latch onto, and that will create this negative perception of insurance companies. I think the biggest negative perception about insurance companies is that we do not want to pay claims. That's what we exist. We're just here to take your money and not pay claims, and that's not true. That's not true fundamentally, and it actually feels offensive as someone working in an insurance company, because when I'm speaking to my team, I always say to them, "Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Don't look for ways to reject claims. Do the right thing." And so, obviously, our clients don't see that. They just sort of experience this negativity around the perception that insurance companies are there to reject your claim. So, yeah, I mean, that's my sort of bit on that point, yeah.
Can I add?
Yes.
So I think in terms of young people joining this industry, I think there's a lack of insight into
Yeah.
how exciting a career can be in this industry. Where else can you find sort of a gathering point for so many different skills, backgrounds? I mean, law degrees, accounting degrees, actuarial background,
Engineering.
all of the above, literally everything. Even in the medical malpractice space, you can be a nurse and you can work, and so it's a microcosm of so many different skills. And if you are really committed to growing, then the insurance industry is definitely the place to be. And also, but you can also just be in the insurance industry and in your little silo, but you need to actively look out for other opportunities where you can engage with other people and see where those skills can sort of cross-pollinate, and you can grow and just be a better employee and grow as a human being as well, and live a more satisfied life and find a lot of satisfaction in your career. So we need to show people. Sorry, can I just add this last little part? I'm not being paid to say this, but I honestly believe that shows like The Insurance Apprentice give a little bit of insight into how interesting and how wide a field the work, insurance work, what insurance work actually entails. So I think those kind of insights just makes insurance a little bit sexier, and it doesn't make it sexier. It just shows the world and young people that it's a really appealing career.
I'd just like to add that maybe that's why Christopher won.
I mean,
Just because he...
The word insurance in some communities is synonymous with fraud, amatsotsi. And when I started in the insurance industry, it was painful. I think like Chris, he still feels the pain. I don't anymore. And for the simple reason that it inspires me to educate. When people still put us synonymously with fraud and people not wanting to pay claims, it's an opportunity to educate. Whilst when I was younger, I would almost say turn pink, but I don't turn pink, but I'll boil and saying, people are saying the career that I've chosen is about fraud, but it was really because they were not educated enough, which I think is really part of what we are there to do as an industry. And I think the four of us have also touched on the aspect of education of people about insurance in different ways, shapes, and forms. So for me, that's really one of the key ones as well.
No, thank you. I'd just like to add on, but also pose it back to you, and for any comments as well. Back in the days, when I was your age, it was the insurance was people that came to knock at your grandmother's door and take her money, but then when she needs them, they're not there anymore. And what I like about the phase legislation that got set up, what I like about it was the FSB, now it's the FSCA. There's a lot going on about the protection of the customer, but I'm not sure, you can tell me as to, do you think that the FSCA and the legislation are doing enough to educate the market in order for them to have their perceptions changed about the insurance market in general? And what value do you think they added?
So legislation definitely played a key role. You now have all sorts of things, including the policyholder protection rules. You also have the TCF, which one, maybe it's not really a law, but it's a framework that really allows us to do the right thing to policyholders. What I would add, though, is the FSCA, the IISA, the FIA, SAIA, and all these bodies. They are there to assist in guiding conversation, but I believe that the work should be done between the bodies themselves, but also for all of us here, reinsurers, insurers, brokers, and anyone who would have the opportunity to really sit in front of the client. So it's not a 1D view. It's also not a 2D. It's a 7D if we have 7 facets within the insurance industry. It's really a collective effort, collaboration for us to be able to do right regarding changing the perception and doing the right thing for the end user, which are the policyholders.
Anyone else?
Go ahead.
From my side, I'd also like to add on what Kosi just mentioned. I think we often say policyholders as if it's some distant person. Policyholders is us, and I think also I like what you say with education. Also with myself, I have a household and content cover. But then the question that I often ask myself, did I even read the policy? And if I didn't read it, do I understand what is covered? And I think when you speak about education, those are the type of conversations that we need to be having. Do we, as the people in this room, understand what is covered in my policy? Or are we saying that, can you please reduce my premium to this figure and tweak whatever you need to tweak in the background? So I think for us, it's important to really focus on that education and really making sure that policies are in a language that the next person understands, or having webinars or YouTube videos like you do to make sure that people really understand when I say that this is covered, what does it mean? What am I paying for? What are the payrolls? And I think once we start having more of those conversations, then we ourselves can also start challenging legislation to say, is the legislation appropriate for us?
Yeah. In my view, I don't think the entire responsibility is on the regulators to educate our customers. I think that customer enablement should be built into the strategy of every insurance company out there. There should be specific initiatives that are aimed at ensuring that our customers, our brokers, potential customers are informed. And at the same time, it's about, insurance companies positioning themselves in a way that they become attractive to those customers, for those customers to then want to work for an insurance company. So I think it's a holistic sort of approach. And the final point is that there should be more cooperation between regulators and insurance companies. Focus less on compliance and more toward, enhancing or pushing forward the agenda of having a more customer-centric industry as a whole.
No, thank you. Anything else to add? Nothing else to add. What I wanted to go back to you about, Marissa, is you mentioned a couple of things which I don't think people outside of the industry understand as the lay of the insurance sector, as to how many different types of opportunities. So even as you're sitting as a doctor, there's a potential that you could fit into the insurance sector, whether you're sitting as, a filmmaker, there is a space for you in the insurance sector. There's a lot of space. So can you just discuss the different sort of classes of business and that exist for a young person? So even if somebody watches this video later as well, gets to understand that it doesn't just end with call center, selling you a policy and not paying your claim at the end, which doesn't really happen.
Never. Yes, so I think I'm going to take the easy answer here and say that I think that there are very few skill sets and or qualifications that would be excluded in the insurance space. So there's probably some sort of role for you to play in the insurance space regardless of your background. with a little bit of insight and training into how the insurance industry work, you can probably make a contribution there by bringing your skill set. If you look at the liability space, we're talking engineers, we're talking tax practitioners, we're talking attorneys, we're talking medical professionals, all of the above. And seeing that I'm in the liability space, it's always the go-to. But like I said, I think nothing is excluded. So it's really a space where people can consider joining regardless of your background. And I think it's also a little note to all of us already part of the insurance industry to say, let's look at other people. Let's look at how we can bring them in and utilize their skills. When I joined the insurance industry specifically after leaving practice, I was the first person to say, wow, there's a lot that I don't know. I'm an attorney here from Sandton, but there's a lot that I don't know and a lot that I needed to learn in a really short space of time. And I did it because I had the support of people. But at the end of the day, there's a benefit to thinking outside of the box, outside of the insurance box. So if you specifically have some data analytical background, that is absolutely something that we could utilize almost as a weapon in the insurance industry, not to make things more fair, to manage risk proactively. So I think, Chris, this actually leads to a point that you and I discussed this morning. Do you want to also add to that?
There are many points. Which point are you? Oh, yes. So in the conversation this morning, we were talking about diversity. And I'll get into this a bit later, but for all companies at their very base want to grow, right? In order to grow, you need to innovate. In order to innovate, you need diversity of thought. And so if you think about Naked, right, insurance company, obviously, again, not paid to say this. They are an insurance company that was developed by non-insurance professionals. A diversity of thought. They came up with really, really something so innovative that people are buying into this idea. And that goes to what Marissa said now, and goes to the point that we want to make here, is that there's a space for every profession within the insurance profession. Pilots as well. I mean,
True story. Aviation insurance. All right. No, thank you. I've got another question before we cut to the break. For Babala, I'll start with you first. How can the insurance industry adapt to the expectations and preferences of younger generations in terms of work culture, flexibility, and career development?
Honestly, I think that's a tough question. Because then it speaks to, I guess most of the people here would somewhat understand why I mean it's tough. You have all these different generations that were somewhat wired a bit differently. I think I was wired in a generation where literally king, so it means that you really just face things head on, you tackle it, you need to be resilient. And in terms of adapting, I'm always of the opinion that for someone to say you need to adapt to our generation, we somewhat need to take a step back and understand how have we gotten to this point. So the people that have been historically here, what have they done to get to this point? What can we learn from there? And then have that discussion in terms of, is it really working? Is it not working? I think we need leaders that are challenging the status quo to say that as much as this has been done like this historically, can it be done differently? And really open up the floor and have an open door policy to have such conversations within the organizations and open up the table and the floor to be able to challenge things and the way that they have been done. And I think also in the same breath, really just looking at it from what the market is saying. If you're a numbers person, you look at market share. So in terms of majority of the policyholders, where are they currently sitting? And they're sitting in traditional reinsurance or insurance and reinsurance organization, mainly because of the fact that I want peace of mind. If I'm going to be going to an insurer that's been around for 5 years, even looking at business from a business point of view, they are still volatile, they're still quite new. Am I comfortable to say that I'm going to put my money here so that in 5-10 years' time, I'm confident that this person is going to pay my claims? And I think that's where we're at the moment. We're struggling to find the balance between comfort, peace of mind, and like you mentioned, innovation and doing things differently. And I think we need the larger players to start investing in that innovation, that InsurTech. I think one of the movies that I was watching is the one regarding BlackBerry and the iPhone. I really liked the BlackBerry. It was quite nice, fits nicely into your hand. The buttons were great. But then comes the question that once you see the industry changing, once you see a different generation is coming through, is it a matter of this is when you start tilting towards the iPhone, or do you need to tilt beforehand and be the ones that are driving that change or that innovation?
Thank you. Bokosi, do you have anything to add?
Just some trivia on flexibility. I see that Marisa had a phone in grade 4.
Yeah.
My grandparents were not that flexible. I had to beg for a phone. I think I got my first phone when I was around 17, 18. Now thinking about it, it actually didn't need insurance. It was one of those where when you're talking and then it falls, you could piece it together and then say, hello, my phone had fallen. That was just an aside. You spoke about generations, and I believe that it's one of the key issues for me. It's understanding that different generations want different things from work. I grew up with my uncles, so I spent a lot of time with people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm wired like that, which is why I'm holding a piece of paper here when my peers are holding tablets and phones. The world of work today is a lot more complex. So when you spend more time with people who are a lot older in the industry, there's common themes regarding what they wanted from work. Today, it's a lot more different. You have one person who's really passionate about diversity, and when a company doesn't really show it, even if they do it, when they don't show it, the person is not convinced and they won't do it. If they are not about going green, goal 2030 or 2040 or 2050 based on company, people will not align themselves with those particular companies. So the world of work today is, in my mind, a lot more complex about those opportunities. So it's now for companies to be deliberate and have an understanding that where changes took 10, 15 years in generations, today that gap is a lot shorter. People are not the same people that they were 3 to 5 years ago. And I say this because all of us actually are now leaders in the businesses as well as in industry. How do we find ways for us to be able to tap into all these different preferences, cultures that the younger generation is so yearning for? I want to tell you today that we have the silver bullet, but the truth is it will differ from company to company, from individual to individual. And we then should be deliberate as an industry as well as companies for us to be able to tap into that and use it to our advantage, not just for ourselves as an industry, not just for the individuals, but also for the stakeholders that we also serve as an industry.
So I'm gathering adapt or die. I think what you're saying is, I think 2020 is what flipped the coin completely upside down, and technologies got developed that weren't there before. And the last question before we take a break, I'd like to ask anyone on the panel, do you think, because Babalo said something very interesting, that, you know, you sort of need to cater to the younger market, but then there is this old structure that's there, and to some degree, some structures, if it works, why break it? You know, do you agree with if it works, why break it? And why would you say so?
I find myself in a unique position because whilst I spend time with the older, I'm young, so I'm also forced to spend time with the younger. And I'm trying as much as possible to spend as much time as possible with like-minded people so that we become that bridge. Because generational challenges in business is a real thing. If you haven't seen it, you're probably sitting at home. So it's real. And I believe that we need pioneers, people who are passionate about wanting to close that gap. But that gap will not only be closed by people who are sitting in between generations. I've met business leaders and young people who are also adaptable. Younger people adapting to the top, and people at the top also adapting to the young. So for me, it's not a give and give or a take and take. It's really about a give and take. It's always easy to speak about balance. It's not really an easy thing to always implement it, but I still believe that it's possible. This didn't really start today. Of course, today it's a lot more complex, but these things have been going for a while, and we need to find that sweet spot where we're able to reach a compromise and eventually be able to move forward.
I tend to agree with Bukosi. I think that as well, that if companies don't adapt to what's happening now from a generational point of view, they will die. They'll find themselves in unprofitable positions of having to make or take drastic sort of steps. Because if you're speaking about talent specifically, companies have a value proposition that they, demonstrate out to the world at large to attract talent. That's obviously because you have your more seasoned workforce that are starting to leave, and then you have your more junior guys coming in. And what you don't want as a company is something that I would probably call hole in the bucket effect, where you have all of this new talent coming in, you train, develop them, and they leave. Because you don't actually live up to the value proposition that you are proposing to the market at large. So adaptability when it comes to talent is understanding, this is our talent pool. We want to attract this talent into the business. Who are they? So very much like the effort we spend on trying to understand who our customers are and building this customer profile. So too, and again, I'll say it needs to be built either as a strategic pillar or as a strategic enabler to determine, there has to be intentionality, as Bukosi has very rightly pointed out, to understand who are our future employees and how must we as a business change, adapt, evolve to sort of attract those guys and then keep them in the business, and therefore ensuring longevity of our business, and then we don't have to die.
And also just add on that, I think talking with one of our business leaders within the insurance space, something that he also mentioned is that we need to understand that not everything is normally distributed. We need to think about things also from a Pareto effect. Probably 80% of our claims come from 20% of our policyholders, and really thinking about it in that way. Like you said, if it's not fake, it's not broken, is there really a need to fix it? And sometimes the answer is no. If things are working as they are, we can continue. But I think what is important is having the mindset of knowing when is it time to tilt to the more innovative, disruptive part, and then when is it time to tilt back to we need a stable environment. You have nat cats coming up. There's a change in how things are being done, and we need stability. So I don't necessarily think it's about the balance, but knowing when to tilt to the innovation side, and then probably after a few years becomes a bit stable. Now this becomes the new norm, and then thinking about, I guess, post that, the next generation, when is it time to tilt again? And then that now becomes the new norm.
I agree with that. I would just add that, like Bukosi mentioned, being that bridge is very, very important. And I think for us to learn from more experienced people in the industry is an absolute win, because that means we don't have to go reinvent the wheel where it's not necessary. But I think what we as young people would do is to think critically about the input that we receive and change where necessary.
Yep.
So we're not disregarding experience, it's something that I personally value very much, to have conversations and coffees with more experienced people in the insurance space, because there's a lot to learn from them, and specific key people in this regard. But at the end of the day, our critical thinking is going to be the game changer to balance that learning from people who have been around the block versus, and balancing that with the disruptive, innovative thinking.
Thank you, Marissa. Okay, that closes our first session. So this first part was really just to get into your brains, but also just discuss the sector in general. But as Vukosi mentioned, the 3 pillars that we'll be maybe discussing or can discuss further today is the part of education, people, mentorship, and innovation. Yes, my speech sometimes. Innovation and technology. I have a slight stutter, that's why I speak fast. So yes, when we come back, we're going to now delve into that even further. So for now, you can take a little leg stretch. It's 12 minutes past. Can we please be back at 25 past to start? If you need it for this next round, we're going to take 45 minutes exactly discussing the last key topics: people, mentorship, and innovation and technology. And I'd like to pose the first question to Vukosi. What role can mentorship and professional development programs play in nurturing young talent within the insurance industry?
So the 4 of us sitting here, and probably some of you sitting in the crowd, would agree that mentorship is one of the most critical things in any industry, not just in the insurance industry. And for me, mentorship particularly happens in 2 main ways. It's either formal and informal. A lot of what I've gotten is actually informal, just having coffees with different people. And the impact is really something that gives a lot of longevity. And I'll put it in my mind as probably 3 key issues. The first one being the fact that when someone gives you mentorship and or training, it's an opportunity to get a shortcut into certain experiences, whether it's life and or professional. And Marissa, I think you touched on it, saying that we don't have to make the same mistakes that they did. And by the same token, they can also tell us some cool things that they did so that we can do certain things that we do also in a better way. I remember having coffee with Peter Olliott, is the CEO of Indwe. I think it was about 2 years ago. And I had this, what I believed was a really cool idea in my mind. So I shared it with him regarding how I would go about packaging as well as launching this particular product. And he says to me, because I actually tried that in 2003. The nice thing, though, was about our conversation. He then told me why it didn't work at that point in time. Because after that, he went on to do a lot of other amazing things. And I think around 2010 or 2011, went into Indwe to then become the CEO till to date. What that then gives you as a young person or as the person who's being mentored, you're not starting from zero. So you know that someone thought about this, it's been tried, and this is why it didn't work. Of course, 2003 is 21 years ago. A lot has changed till today. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not starting from zero. I'm really starting from somewhere. The second thing is, a mentor will challenge you in terms of what's possible, in terms of what you do generally. And sometimes when you're walking into an unknown territory, the temptation is always to withdraw when you're not sure. But a mentor will then be there to give you that push that you require and tell you also reasons why you are a fit person to do what you're doing. As we develop in life, sometimes some people get the opportunity to grow up quickly. And sometimes when you get there, you start doubting yourself. Do I really have to be here? But a mentor is then there to hold your hand and tell you, keep going. You can really do this. You got this. And for me, that's really something that's super, super valuable. The other thing is, it opens up network. My hashtag for the IIG this year is Link Up. And that's something I've done the whole of my career, and I will do it until I retire at 90. There is power in networking. But what a mentor also does is they just don't open up doors, or they just don't teach you how to network. But it's also about networking with the right people. Networking is just not about coming here and just talking to people and then you leave. It's about finding synergies, finding opportunities for collaboration. On some day when you network, you become the person who helps someone. On another day, it will be the other way around. On some days, you will find opportunities to benefit the two of you. And the last thing I'll say about issues of mentorship as well is that it joins the new and the old. We're just chatting about it now during the break, that sometimes we keep having people saying we want companies to adapt to how we want things done. But the truth of the matter is, it's a two-way street. Can't just be a one-way street. And what mentorship does is, because in some instances, it comes from two different generations. Not always, but in some instances. And you get a unique opportunity to get different perspectives. And when done sincerely, which I've seen being done a lot in the industry, there's a lot of learning between the two. Because you just don't get a conversation and mentorship and then you go home and sit. You start reflecting. I had this perception, but I've been changed, and this is how actually things could probably also work. So it's a powerful thing for the tripartite relationship, for the individual who's being mentored, for the mentee, but also for the growth of the industry.
Chris?
Yeah. So I'm a product of mentorship, and I'm not saying that just I'm not taking away from what Bukosi has said. And before I get into that story, I actually want to say something that actually complements what Bukosi's message was, is that intelligent people learn from their mistakes. Wise people, though, learn from others' mistakes. And I've made it my mission to find out what are the mistakes that, these people that I approach, what are the mistakes that they've made, so that I never have to actually go down that route. It's creating these teachable moments for myself. But going back to me being a product of mentorship, I had a mentor, and Bukosi, myself, as well as Pobalo, were on the Roots and Wings program in 2019. Or at least, 2019, I think. And my mentor at that time, incredible woman, incredible. We are now friends. We've remained very, very close all this time. But we were so vastly different to each other. And I think that's the key to mentorship. You need a mentor who is nothing like you. Very often people get caught in the trap that, this person can be my mentor because we're just the same. We're just alike. And so all you are doing is limiting your thinking ability. And you're not moving towards a more diverse sort of thinking. And I think when it comes down to retention of talent, my story and my sort of journey with my mentor is really one of the reasons why I stayed in the insurance industry, because I was at this crossroads in my career, did not know where I wanted to be. And she just asked me a series of questions repeatedly, and provided me with nuggets of information and, information on her life and, what had gone on in her sort of mind space when she was around my age at the time. And I realized that I am not unique in this thinking, and that I shouldn't be, making a mountain of this molehill, because I'm actually where I'm supposed to be right now in my career, thinking about, should I move in a different direction? And you get such focused sort of advice, sort of direction, and you have these focused conversations that pull you or push you towards the direction that you should actually be on. And you get these nuggets on how to cope with certain situations, how to deal with certain people, how to manage your emotions. You start working on all of these 4 intelligences, your AQ, IQ, SQ, EQ. And there's such value in that. And I think, my final sort of point on this is that as an industry, in addition to having, your direct manager sort of leading you or your colleagues around you, companies should actually encourage their employees to seek mentors, either within the organization or outside of their organizations. And many companies have started already with these mentorship programs that are run internally. To my mind, I think a lot more companies should be doing it. And, I said it was my last point, but the idea though is your mentors don't necessarily have to be, years your senior. It could really just be the people that you're sitting next to on a daily basis. And there's lots of value in that as well. Yeah.
That's the most insightful chat I've heard about mentorship. I think I was about to ask a question, but it's a twofold approach, because I wanted to ask, do you think that with mentorship, the onus lies on me as the employee or the junior, or does it lie with the company to try and build a culture of that the senior members are to mentor the younger ones?
So, it's a dual responsibility. I think for companies, and specifically for this conversation, who want to attract and retain talent, I think that there should be mentorship programs within companies themselves. And remember, retention is an outcome, it's not an action. And so you have these things implemented within a company, like a mentorship program, then your retention will automatically happen. But there's one thing that I say to those who report to me in a formal work environment. I always say to them, do not place me at the wheel of your career. Because when you don't get to where you want to be, you will resent no one else but me. And it removes the accountability completely. So yes, I will open up as many doors that I'm able to open up for you. But you need to also seek doors outside of here. And if that leads to you leaving the company, of course I want to retain you, duh. But if that leads to you leaving the company, I'll be glad to know that you'll be leaving a very fully developed and rounded professional. And it makes me proud. It makes me happy. It makes it, and for you, you've now developed the skill on networking by yourself, by approaching people by yourself, by accepting rejection in most cases as well. People are sometimes too busy to be mentoring. People probably have 3 or 4 mentors already. So it's a dual sort of role.
Thank you. Marissa, you were about to say something, or are you?
No.
Okay. Vukosi.
So one of the thoughts that came into my mind as Chris was talking was that sometimes you are working in an organization that only has 3 people or 5, which is a very small environment. The industry has initiatives that will allow you to also get mentors, either formally, but also you are in a position to attend networking events where you could also identify mentors as well. The IISA, I believe, at some point was also doing some mentorship programs. Allow me to also plug in the IIG. We have the Roots and Wings program that runs every year. This year, it's also on the African continent, as far north as Nigeria and to the east as Madagascar. So there's many initiatives, and it's for one to really take those opportunities to say, I want to do this and I'm going to participate in this as well.
Can I add a quick thing? So I think all of these wonderful initiatives are great. And what that does is that it gets rid of excuses. So whether there's a young person in a 3-person company, there's a whole industry out there. And all these industry initiatives are actually great because it gives a specific young person in a small organization the opportunity to see what the industry is like and not only your own little 3-person company. So that's fantastic. And I just wanted to also mention that this is a really high pressure industry and it helps a lot to have voices of reason. So beyond formal mentorship, somebody who's got years of experience, Chris, like you mentioned, a colleague 2 or 3 years your senior, somebody where you can just bounce ideas off, get some input, it is invaluable for a sustainable career in this industry.
Thank you for that. Which will take me then to the next question. Posing this to Pabalo and to Chris. How important is diversity and inclusion in attracting and retaining young talent? And what steps can organizations take to foster a more inclusive workplace?
So I think it's important to first understand what diversity is. And diversity at its very basis is difference, right? So all of us sitting in this room right now are diverse. And I want to make another point. Me sitting next to another Indian male, we are diverse. Because your diversity speaks to your different perspectives, what were your life experiences, etc., etc. And I suppose that's where the starting point is, to actually understand as a company what diversity is. And then you have inclusion. And inclusion actually is the activator to diversity. Because you can have a really diverse workforce, but if people do not feel safe in order to raise their hands and let their voices be heard, then you are not really living the true diversity, equity, and inclusion dream that all companies aspire to be. Then equity in South Africa specifically is catered for in terms of the Employment Equity Act. But equity is understanding the historical disadvantages that certain groups of people have suffered. And again, at its very basis, understanding that not everybody had the same sort of start as the next person. And so when I think about diversity, I was having this conversation with Marissa earlier on. If you take 2 employees at Exco level, for example, and the only difference between them is their sexual orientation, for example, right? So they could be people of color, but the further difference could be that, sexual orientation. If you delve deeper, you might find that they both were raised in the same town. They attended the same church. Their families went to the same restaurants. Their dads were friends. They had the same sort of circle of friends. And then you have to ask yourself, is that true diversity? Because if you put those 2 guys to solve a particular challenge, you might find that they will use their same perspectives, which they've developed through their socialization, same viewpoints, to come up to a solution that's not innovative at all. And so as companies, I've said this earlier on as well, our company's mission is to grow, become profitable, right? So let's look at the business case here. In order to grow, you need to innovate, right? To innovate, you need diversity of thought, right? And so to activate the diversity of thought, there needs to be inclusion. Everybody's voices need to be heard. And so the point I'm really trying to make is that companies need to move away from just tick box exercises to truly living these diversity, inclusion, and equity sort of like projects or initiatives that they want to sort of embark on. What they can do is they need to start from the top down and start looking at how do we enable our leaders within the organization to think in a diverse way, to think in an inclusive way. And I think that's where a lot of companies do actually fall short, because there isn't much of energy or intention pumped into that. And so, if I have to like sort of list it out, I would look at it as they should have metrics. So what are the metrics that they are assessing? So quantitatively, you have a diverse workforce, but qualitatively, do you have an inclusive culture? And your culture comes from your leaders. And so you need to then enable your leaders and start having these courses around diversity, inclusion, and equity. And then you need to then go down a step to then look at your employee and your workforce. Coaching is a big thing, mentoring is a big thing. And so as you start doing all of these sort of initiatives towards creating a more inclusive culture, diverse culture, equitable culture, you'll reach that point where you then have your employees talking about the companies they work for and how indeed they are diverse, inclusive, and equitable. And so those sort of stories get out to a larger talent pool. Because if you are not diverse, you are not inclusive, you don't practice equity, you limit your workforce to a group of people who all think the same. And you have no innovation, and you will not have any growth. Or any growth you might experience may only be inflationary sort of tied. And what you'll find is that people will start leaving your organization because they are top talent. There are some brilliant people out there who would rather work for a small insurtech as opposed to a traditional insurer. Simply because I'd rather get paid a little less, but work for a company that actually aligns to my values as a young person. Yeah.
From my side, actually, probably would like to focus on inclusivity more than diversity. Like you said, diversity is somewhat an easy one. We can just look at, I guess, are we different? Do we look different? And I think probably based on my own personal story. So last year, I had a conversation with, I guess, one of the directors in a different part of the organization that I'm in. And we really spoke about inclusivity. And I think that's where I started thinking about what exactly does inclusivity mean. Often in meetings, I'm that person. There's one of these committees that I sit on, like a member engagement board for the Chill Society. I sat on it for 2 years, and in all of those meetings, I never said anything. So I just go to a meeting, be quiet, observe. And then I think eventually, like the discussion that I had with one of these directors, that you often get into a situation where you're somewhat asked to say something in a meeting, pick up your hand, just say something, just be heard. And inclusivity also means that if I'm the person that wants to sit in a meeting and observe, I need to be in a space where people are comfortable with that. I don't have to say anything in a meeting just because it's what's expected of me. And I think also in terms of that, I guess, continuing the story, I ended up, actually my 2 years was over without having said anything, but then with inclusivity is one of those things that I still continue to attend the meetings post the 2 years. And when you say inclusivity, they're not necessarily saying, okay, your 2 years is over, you're getting chucked out. It's like, we're still inclusive, if you want to be here, we can always extend your term. Just probably mention, can you please extend my term? I'm like, oh, cool, like, please do extend my term. And ended up, like a month ago, we actually had repositioning of the actual brand. Because then probably even in this room, or even if actual students, if you had asked someone what does an actuary do, similar to now, like what does an insurance person do? We can throw a lot of words around risk management, uncertainty, solves problems. But then as a young person coming in, I want, I guess, that one-liner to say, you are the individuals that really ensure that when push comes to shove, claims will be paid. When push comes to shove, I can have peace of mind that my house will be rebuilt, that I'll have something to leave behind. And I think those are the type of conversations that that we need to be having when it comes to inclusivity. And with all of that, I really believe that when you say inclusivity, also with perceptions and different generations, what we need to get right, that one-liner is the core of what is it, if I'm going to go into this industry, what is the core of the insurance industry? What is the core that I'll be doing? And then post that, we can always just adapt based on, okay, I'm this generation, I want this core to look like this. I'm that generation, I want this core to look like that. And for us being inclusive enough to allow people to get, I guess, the gist of what this core is, and then take that core and make it their own. So for me, that's how I started understanding inclusivity. It's not necessarily about saying to someone, I guess also sticking to mentorship. I've always been told say something, but I'm one of those people that I'm not going to say something for the sake of saying something, but if I do say something, it has to be impactful, and it is probably going to be one of those probing questions that I want the next person to feel, where did that come from? More than anything. And I really think, like, when you think about inclusivity, is how do we, I guess, understand what is the core of it all, and then how do we give the space or open up the doors for people to take this and to make it their own. And then that's what speaks, like you said, to retention and staying in this industry for longer.
Thank you. And that will lead me to my next question to Marissa. What do you think the opportunities are that exist within the sector for young professionals to make an impact and advance their careers at the same time?
Once again, the world is our oyster, or this industry at least. I mean, there's a lot in terms of just realizing the value of the work that you do. I work in the claims space, and for me, it's the privilege of a lifetime to make a difference in people's lives when it really matters. At the end of the day, you know, one of my colleagues the other day in another panel discussion mentioned we should treat everybody fairly and not only customers fairly. The insurance industry as a whole, all the role players, brokers, the service providers, and the like. So it's really reassuring. We're young people and we want to make a difference in people's lives. It's a value that most young people generally cherish. So if we can make that connection to show people that what you do on the daily makes a difference in people's lives, I think that already provides some sort of an energy and motivation injection into your day-to-day job. And then beyond that, in the insurance industry, I mean, we'll talk again about things like the insurance apprentice, making use of the IIG programs, the Roots and Wings, the mentorship opportunities. It's absolutely such an exciting industry to be part of. And Chris, do you want to add anything? You're welcome.
The Claims Forum.
And that's the thing. So the Claims Forum is, and maybe Chris, you can speak a little bit about the Claims Forum, but it's an initiative that was started by young people. Nobody told us to do it. It was an opportunity of young people coming together, making a difference. So, Chris, maybe you want to just say something about that.
Okay, so Prince mentioned the Claims Forum. So within the claims space specifically, you have a lot of young talent coming in. And so when it comes to training, for example, that is something that is largely, in our experience, left to the professional to sort of figure it out. If I go back to my experience as a young claims professional, it was horrendous. For 6 months, I sat there and thought to myself, I know absolutely nothing. And there was no sort of validation. I mean, there was no one telling me actually you're on the right track. And that's a leadership issue. But I mean, that provided the impetus to sort of think about how can we start supporting claims professionals within the industry? Because what we see within the claims space specifically is that a claims person will start at company A. They'll work at company A for 6 months and they will move to company B. And they'll work at company B for a year and then they'll leave to company C, where they might stay for between 2 or 3 years, and then some of them leave to another company, some of them leave the industry. And so you have this, again, hole in the bucket challenge, where you have talent coming in and you can recruit as quick as possible, but there's a hole in the bucket letting all this talent out, regardless of where they might end up. And so the Claims Forum is really there to support and to enable young claims professionals whilst at the same time getting our more seasoned claims staff up to contemporary standard. So what's been happening in the claims space 20 years ago, sorry, it's not happening anymore. So this is what our actual reality is right now. And so, that's more or less the claims forum, but the impetus is to drive the enablement, empowerment, education of young talent to sort of attract, but again, like I said, retention being an outcome, to retain who we have right now, to ensure there's longevity within the insurance space.
Thank you, Chris. You spoke about retention, you spoke about holes in the bucket, and the next question is, I'll pose it to Bukosi first. How can educational institutions and industry associations collaborate to better prepare young people for careers in insurance, to close those gaps?
This is an exciting one for me. I've been doing initiatives similar to the IIG since I was 19. At that time, it was the Actuarial Science and Insurance Society. Managed to become president, I think, at 22, 23. Did lots of cool things in between, up until now, when I have the opportunity to lead and work with some amazing council members to run what I believe is the largest regional institute on the continent. The role that those institutes hold, as well as universities hold, is really key in firstly attracting young talent. And I think from an attraction perspective, it will be both educational institutions as well as associations, in the fact that you've heard of the phrase, catch them young. If you try and catch someone in terms of career decisions in varsity, more often than not, it's late, because they have studied certain courses, they want to go in a certain direction. Sometimes it's possible to move. And that's why I enjoy South Africa, because a lot of times you do get the ability to be agile. Elsewhere on the continent, you choose your subjects at 15 as an engineer. You're an engineer through and through. But from a South African perspective, which I think is also going into the rest of the continent, you want people at 15, 16, 17 to have an idea of what insurance is, not just as a product, but also as a career. Because when people think insurance, they think call center. Some people are still thinking of insurance as people knocking on your door, because that's the exposure that they've had. So for me, it's really about, firstly, catching them young. And secondly, it's about positioning insurance as an amazing career. And we've gone through a generation of people saying that I joined insurance by accident. It pains me sometimes, but it's fine, because that's the reality. But we need to then move into a phase where people really take insurance as a career of choice and not just a career in terms of an accident. So to professionalize it, to really highlight it as cool a career as it is. And then when we look at associations now, when people are in the industry, the IISA, the IIG, IING, GWII, IIKZN, IIWC, all of us have a responsibility, ultimately, to work with educational institutions as well as the communities that we go into. I remember when I was 19, we decided to go into this community. We attended, we went to one school, used it as a center, and then called people from 9 schools. So we had about 200 people who were in their last 2 years of high school. People didn't know what an actuary was. Some of them even struggled to pronounce it because it was a word that they had never heard. Some people were hearing about insurance for the very first time at that point in time. And for me, it's late. Today we have access to technology, we have access to the internet, we have access to a number of tools that we could use to attract talent. And then once the talent is in here, associations then have lots of other cool ideas and things for us to be able to then retain that talent, and hopefully have people work in the industry for as long as they are there. And lastly, I think you slightly mentioned it. I like joking with some of my friends, engineers, pilots, etc., to say, do you know I can employ you? And when you look at some of the greatest product specialists that we have, not just in South Africa, but globally, it's people with that particular background, hydrologists, geologists. There's a new word I learned recently, hydrogeologists as well. That was a really cool thing. And these are people who are within the insurance industry. So it's an industry that needs, in my mind, repositioning as an industry. Not sometimes people look at it as an inward focusing, but we're not there to serve ourselves.
No.
We're there to serve the industry. Not the industry as in the insurance industry, various industries. We're there to serve individuals. So we do have work to do, and I believe that we are on the right track, but there's more work to do.
Thank you, Babala. Do you have anything?
From my side, I also just like to add on that, because you're speaking about education providers, about associations. Sometimes I believe that if you do not have a seat at the table, just bring your own table. And with that, what I mean is that often, if you think about some of these training programs or skills program, it does require money for you to be able to go on that program. And sometimes your employer might say that, no, it's not in line with what we want, so they won't pay for it. And then it's about thinking about how do we change the mindsets of young professionals to know that if this is really something that you want, sometimes you don't have to pay for it. At the beginning, you mentioned that you have a YouTube page on insurance. And when you think about it, are young people really watching YouTube to learn something, or are they watching it to really just pass time, or is it just one of those things that they just absorb and consume? So I think for me, what we should be teaching people is how to have that growth mindset, how to be curious. If probably someone accidentally comes across your YouTube page, now they should be thinking, oh, this is interesting. What is this? How do we get to the IISA? How do we now get to liability? And I think it's something that one of my managers or my mentors as well said. As much as we're all sitting here, can someone really say they understand what liability means? There are a few areas within liability, but to call yourself a liability specialist, do you know how the pricing works? Do you know how the policies work? Do you know it so well that even if I woke you up and said, my cousin has a problem with this, that you're able to advise me? So I think what's important is that building that curiosity, that it's not necessarily 9 to 5, and that curiosity thinking, actually there's YouTube, and you don't have to pay for YouTube to get these skills. And how do we somewhat start tapping into those type of areas and avenues so that by the time you do want to go maybe for a longer course, like your Roots and Wings or your ClassSolve or your ILDPs, you've already shown the initiative that this is what I've done to get myself from this point to over here. I cannot go any further unless I do maybe a 6-month program or year program. And for me to do that, this is where it's going to take me.
Thank you. Education. I could talk all day about education, but we need to step it up. Okay, Chris, here's a question for you. What are the emerging trends and innovations in the insurance industry that may appeal to younger generations, and how can organizations leverage these to attract talent?
Mouthful.
You were supposed to be the lawyer.
So there are a ton of emerging trends within the insurance space, and most of them are grounded in technology. So you have like RPA, AI, machine learning, big data, and all of these exciting things that insurance companies are implementing to varying degrees. You have your insurtechs that are obviously, implementing these as the very basis of their business models. And so they are exciting things. But I suppose to answer the question more holistically, you have to, as a company, you have to, again, understand, and I've said this before, understand who is it that you are attracting. So if you're looking at it for Gen Zs, millennials, And you have to understand what their values are. So their values are mostly around community, doing things for good. They want to work hard and obviously achieve success quicker. And these things are possible. I'm going to make a statement on this, and it's a controversial statement. Working hard years ago would only pay dividends 10 years later. Whereas now, working hard can pay dividends within a matter of months. And so it's important for employees to understand that's where that sort of value is grounded in. Now back to my original point. So what insurers need to do is they need to position themselves as, they do all of these amazing things. We actually are there to support communities. I mean, if you look at what happened with the KZN floods, we were there. We restored a lot of things that municipalities didn't do in the shorter space of time. Insurance, as we know it, has always been there to support communities, right? Another thing that young people really, really enjoy and really sort of are attracted to is technology. So what technology is your company using to attract and retain your customers? Like, what exciting things are you doing? And right now, a lot of insurance companies are doing some exciting things, especially the traditional insurers. Insurers need to start rebranding themselves, right? And raising awareness about what they are doing and what is it that they do for communities. What are they doing with technology? They need to sort of create this connection between the really exciting things that they do and the value that they are providing to the world at large. And once they do that, they'll be able to then pique the interests of those millennials and Gen Zs who are looking to work for companies that are there for communities, that are there doing good things for people, that are there who actually have a purpose other than profitability. And if they start getting that sort of mix, that recipe right, you'll find that your millennials, your Gen Zs, your Gen Alphas, and everybody else that comes after that would want to work for an insurance company. It would then become the profession of choice. So if I'm going to start studying a law degree, I'm studying a law degree because I want to do claims in the insurance space. So I think by and large, and this is like a world thing, right? By and large, insurance companies, and I'm going to say it again, need to rebrand and need to raise awareness about what they are doing and creating that connection and move away from, those random billboards about get insurance now. Don't go uninsured and start start talking about what are the things that they are doing in more detail. And the point that I made to Marissa, and again a very controversial point, is that and I'm not saying I am going to be generalizing to a large extent here, and only from my own experiences and from obviously having conversations with people within the industry. A lot of our guys who are at the very end of their careers, regardless of what level they are at, aren't too invested on who's coming after. And so it goes back to the point that I made earlier on, is that in this rebranding, in this raising of awareness, we need to get those guys involved. And say to them, yeah, okay, fine, you've got 2 or 3 years left in your career, but can you help us here? Can you come in and talk about the exciting experiences that you've had in your career? I'm veering away from the technology, but going back to technology, just to summarize, we're doing exciting things with technology. We need to let people know and stop holding it here. Let people know and let our talent pool know that's out there and make them pique their interests and have them excited to come and join the insurance space.
Thank you, Chris. I thought you were going to tell us that we should all start TikTok channels and say, hello guys, welcome to my TikTok channel. Today I'm going to show you the life of a claim specialist. So I woke up and everything's a claim.
Get ready with me.
That's what I thought technology is all about. All right, then last question. And I think anyone can be free to answer this. How can the insurance industry position itself as a rewarding and fulfilling career choice for a young professional beyond financial incentives?
I can take that one and probably say, as an analytical person, the numbers matter. So we do want that money. And I think also probably just deviating a bit, money is somewhat an indicator as you get increases every year is somewhat an indicator to show that I am actually adding value. And with that, I think if you're not necessarily looking at the financial indicator, it goes back to inclusivity. Some people want the fancy title, but then it's a matter of also understanding that there are some experts out there that would rather be sitting at the back of a computer, crunching numbers. They don't want the title. They don't want to be managers. So that's something also to think about and really explore when it comes to inclusivity. And then also from a rewards perspective, also thinking about it from, I guess, knowing the staff, understanding that everybody's is different, being people savvy, and then using programs like this, the IISA, to give someone an opportunity to attend a workshop really also means that this is actually showing someone that that you are rewarded. At the beginning, I mentioned that I got an opportunity to go to the IAG International. Actually, that was the first time I was on a plane, and this is a plane going overseas to Hong Kong and Singapore. And that was also a bit of a retention strategy that is somewhat linked to finances. So not to do any marketing for the IAG, but there is an IAG International tour this year. Hint, hint. So I think from that, when you think about rewards, and it's really about how do you incentivize the next person in a language that they understand. And if someone is not incentivized by money and finances, they need to understand the culture of the organization. And for you to say, okay, like similar to the story with my dad, if you can't afford this, maybe this is not necessarily the space for you to be in. And if we as an organization can't afford to invest in people and in talent and in rewarding them, we really need to think about, are we going to be sitting in a position 10 years from now where all our staff have left the organization and we're retaining whoever is left? So I think for me, as much as we're talking about rewards outside of finances, an organization does invest a lot in its people, and they do want that return on investment. And I think it goes back to leadership and leadership understanding that return on investment is not in a year or two. Return on investment speaks to in 30 years' time. Have you built that succession plan that the leadership that are sitting in your organization can really drive the change that you want to see?
This is an exciting question for me about positioning ourselves as a rewarding career. And allow me to say this. So I wanted to be an architect at some point, and today I get the opportunity to work with architects. I wanted to be a chartered accountant. Now I have to sit and do business interruption calculations. I don't consider myself an expert, but I know my way around the calculations. When I was 5 years old, there's a video, actually, where I said I wanted to be in the army because I want to protect people. That's exactly what we do today. So it's about positioning the career as something that will be able to feed you in two main ways. What you study, because we can employ almost anything, but also in terms of values, what sits within you as a person. I like it when younger people come and ask us and say, so do you do, so you're in insurance. So do you do like funeral policies, car insurance, cell phone insurance? Then I say yes. But listen to this. See all these ship containers that carry thousands of containers. We do that. When you hear that an airplane has gone down and there are claims that have to be paid, we do that. The Leonardo, which is the tallest building, no longer tallest on the continent, but in South Africa, for that project to go, investors wouldn't have put a dime in that if it wasn't for insurance. So insurance as a career fosters innovation. It fosters people to take a lot more risk. We have reinsurers in the house. When Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, when they're about to launch something into space, they will not do it if there's no backing from an insurance perspective. So it's really, for me, a positioning in terms of what we do and what it does for the people on the ground. What I'm describing is what I specialize in. We specialize in business insurance. But the truth is, it's from the men on the street up until the multi-billion-dollar companies. So, ladies and gents, what we do is cool, and the world ought to know about it.
Thank you, Bukosi. That's a very great way to close it off, because you just made me feel cool, actually. Yes, thank you so much for all the comments. So I'd like to stick to time, which is beating me. Can we just have a 10-minute break? After that, we'll come back with closing comments, and then we can do a Q&A session. Thank you. This is the last segment, so if you're about to fall asleep, just hold on, hang 10. You know, Bukosi's almost done. I'm joking. No, okay, before we go to the Q&A, I'd just like to have final words, and I'll start with you, Babalo. Final words with everything that we've discussed today, wrapping up, you know, what can attract the young into the insurance industry.
I thought you'd say, let me save the best for last.
Actually.
I think probably going on to my opening when I spoke about my bio, I really think it speaks to connecting, engaging, and growing. And connecting is platforms like this. How often do young people get an opportunity to sit in rooms like this? The connect is, once we're here, we need to be asking, so unfortunately for the panel, close your ears, we need to be asking those critical conversations. If you're not asking questions today that are going to leave us uncomfortable, then we're not necessarily connecting and putting in enough effort and thought for the future generation. And then with that, being uncomfortable means that you're now going out of that comfort space and we're growing. I think it also just links to one of the conversations I had with Tony earlier in terms of if you see people moving around organizations, are we really asking, why is this person leaving this organization? And we should also not necessarily be okay with fluffy answers. Like, we need to start giving honest feedback and having those tough, difficult conversations. So I think for me, that's how I think about connecting, engaging, and growing, having platforms like this to combine, meet, talk, make each other really debate it out, see different points of view. That's what insurance is about. Because if we're not being uncomfortable now, we're going to sit in a few years' time with another COVID. We're going to sit in a few years' time with another KZN storm, with another Knysna fire. And that really means that once we get to that point or that conversation, our uncomfort could really mean that this insurance industry might no longer be there for the going concern.
Thank you. Chris?
Oh, me next. So as Pavalo was speaking, I thought to myself, I wanna sort of share a story because Bukosi actually touched the nerve there about what insurance does. And this goes to the point of rebranding and repositioning and creating awareness of what insurance does to attract this talent that comes in. So a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I was insured, fortunately, and from a medical insurance point of view. And so had I not had medical aid, I would not have been able to afford the treatment and be sitting here today. And so, I think about it from that perspective. What we do as an insurance industry is so important. And so we need to start sharing those stories. What's this positive impact to the community that insurance has, so that it creates this excitement, this urge, this like sort of need or want for young talent to say, I want to be a part of that. I am studying this and I want to be a part of that space. I want to be involved in saving people's lives because that's what it is. I want to be involved in reconstructing a gigantic building that collapsed because of poor workmanship, for that matter. You know, so that's what I resonate so much with what he said. It like hit that nerve, and I was like, he's 100% right. But it's no use that we are the only ones who know this, and you only become aware of it when you are in the business. We should stop looking at marketing our products. We should stop looking at, you know, the billboards are exciting, they're fun, and start telling stories, because stories connect with people, especially the younger sort of talent force that are out there trying to figure out where they want to be. Yeah.
So just from my side, I think the challenge is to get young people, the buy-in from young people, and spreading the good news, and these good news stories that we get to be part of is how we'll get that buy-in.
Yeah.
And stewardship for me is a very important thing in my life. Whenever great opportunities come my way, including today, you know, I want to make sure that I steward the opportunity well, and I prepare well, and I'm present for that specific moment, whatever the occasion is. And that's something that I think is almost has gone a little bit lost on the young people of today. But if we spread the good news to say that we get to be part of these stories, these real life stories, I believe we'll be able to get their buy-in, and sort of foster that stewardship to say, we're not just doing this for a paycheck at the end of the month. We're actually making a contribution to our society.
Thank you.
You know, on contribution of the industry, I just thought of the claims that we had in, I think it's 2022, the riots. Sasria, which is an insurance company, injected a few billions into the economy, in whose absence the going concern of certain businesses, unfortunately some businesses couldn't open, some businesses had a serious challenge regarding really bouncing back. But bulk of what would have been destroyed and was insured was able to again really come up. And it's an important thing. My last 2 points is, the first one is to the industry. There's work to be done in terms of adapting and all these amazing things. And again, it will differ from one company and one individual to the next. But we must be deliberate about what we do. And then to young people, the industry will do all these cool things to attract you, to retain you. But the career is really, truly in your hands. Mm. And Chris, you must post that. Just don't tell it to your team, that you shouldn't let someone else be on the steering wheel of your career. The career is really in your hands. Mm. We will influence the discussions and the number of leaders within the industry to attract and do the best we can to also retain talent. Mm. But it will also be up to young people to take those opportunities and run with them. Again, it is a fantastic industry. If I had to choose again, I'll choose risk management and insurance.
Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause, please? Okay, would anyone like to pose a question to any of the delegates? Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Lesego Mokalake and I am with WTW. The question that I just wanted to pose was, because you covered the fact that, look, if we're attracting young talent who are already, post high school, you've even said so far as if we're talking to someone who's in grade 11 or 12, I think you said the last 2 years or so of high school is already too late, and that we ought to be trying to catch them young. So my experience on the ground, I guess, among colleagues, industry colleagues, I guess, is that we have two categories of individuals. We have those who've had the benefit of going to higher education institutions, they've chosen certain career paths, and they've managed to get into work and happen to, as they will say, I fell into insurance, be it through exposure or opportunity. So it wasn't necessarily, the intent. And then you have those individuals who happen to, be in a community where someone says, I've heard of an opportunity, and they go for a learnership and whatever, some sort of an opportunity that they just needed to work. Someone heard of something, they went, they got into the industry. Now, then I want to call it a missing middle, I guess. Those who don't have the opportunity of encountering someone who tells them about an opportunity, and those who haven't had the benefit of going to a higher education institution and encountered it via work. I might even go so far as to say, insofar as that missing middle is concerned, you might even have those who, because they aren't working or don't have exposure, don't have the opportunity to know about certain things through LinkedIn, for example. So I'm aware that the distance, obviously, between people's perception of insurance and the reality, we, as the people in this room, have the opportunity to bridge that distance, right? So I just wanted to find out on a more personal level how either one of you really, although I've referenced what you've said, how are you using your platform? How are you using your exposure to make insurance accessible to that missing middle? And I think I ask it because I suppose we could take a page out of your book and start to use our platforms to sort of cater for those individuals who sort of go, unnoticed, I guess. Thank you.
Really great question. So you've called it the missing middle, in inverted commas. And it's a real thing. There are people that do not have access to the information. I think you spoke about LinkedIn. LinkedIn generally, we are seeing a lot more younger people joining LinkedIn, but generally you find it when you're now exposed to work. Now I see people at WITS, at UCT joining LinkedIn. Again, it's the same kind of people. You have people who are sitting elsewhere who might not even have access or thinking even of going into tertiary education. And why I mentioned specifically targeting the last 2 years is at that time people now have a mind of, what am I going to do with my life? We can do it at grade 5, just in terms of information, nothing wrong with it. But at that time, people are now really starting to ask themselves serious questions. And what we did when we had those 200 students that I spoke about, we went into underprivileged communities. Because you'll see that someone who goes to Kingsmead College, Crawford, St. David's, and all the saints, they will know insurance in some way, shape, or form. But it's the people who are in the townships and in sometimes in rural areas as well, who do not have any form of touch with insurance. And so the targeted approach for us is, and the IIG has done certain things over the years as well, to do either career fairs or identify a school back of beyond, interact with those students, give them a bit of guidance and advice. And one of the things that we're going to be doing this year, again, from an IIG perspective, is outside what we do in June, in terms of telling people about what insurance is, we've attached it to an initiative where we are going to be donating through the industry what we call My Desk. So My Desk is really this cool initiative. It was a project. That desk can be used to carry stuff. So it's a pulley. You carry stuff. You can use it as a chair. You can use it as a desk. You can also use it as a charging port. You can also use it as a light, which is really cool. But what we'll do as we interact with those underprivileged communities, whilst it comes as a gift to them to use, we're also introducing the concept of insurance to them. I believe that there is many opportunities to be in touch with communities and give them a lot of this knowledge. When I was younger, I always wanted to do things at a massive scale. Some people at some point called me a unionist. I always enjoyed representing people and doing all these things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I've also found is there's also power in doing things one-on-one. So when you get an opportunity to, whether it's a small group of people, 2-3 people, or another individual, let's be ambassadors of the insurance industry. I know the insurance apprentice is there to look at who the next best ambassador is. But the truth is, we're all ambassadors of the insurance industry, and we should lead and live our lives like that. Something just came to my mind. For our claims people, when you see a claim coming to your desk, remember you're an ambassador. Let's find ways to assist clients, and obviously in line with policy wordings, etc. But it's really an industry where we're in touch with people, we change people's lives, and we should find opportunities and gaps to come up with those innovations. And I'll say, if you have thoughts and ideas that you have, that you believe that institutions like, she calls it the double ISA, most told she should say 007, but the ISA, IIG, and all these initiatives, if you think we have something that we could assist with crafting and then using for the benefit of the insurance industry, please, we're available. That is exactly why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Is anybody else interested in having a question or a comment? Okay, so there's two that side. I'll start this way and then we'll pass by.
Thank you. I'm Pule, reinsurance intermediary. I was interested when you raised the question of inclusion and diversity. You spoke about equity as well, Christopher. But what I wanted to know is whether there is collaboration amongst all the key stakeholders. It can be IISA, IIG, it can be the employer bodies, can be the regulator, on how, what is it that you're doing to address the question of attrition. Someone mentioned that people don't stay in a company 6 months, 12 months. Why is that happening? Have we found a root cause for that? And what is the industry or businesses doing to address that problem?
Yeah. So that's actually quite a deep question. And so in my experience, I mean, this is the first step towards the retention of employees. But I'm going to go back to like my previous statement that retention is really an outcome. And so it's on companies to ensure that their attritional rates are lower. And so that's usually managed through metrics, through KPIs, through initiatives to try and keep talent in there. So, I mean, I can only give you the perspective from the company or the companies I've worked at. And I do know that they have been targeted conversations around what needs to be done in order to retain employees. But in saying that, and I've read this somewhere, that saying that you want to attract and retain employees is great. I mean, we can all say that. It's great. But it should actually be an agenda item for your board members. It should actually be a standing agenda item that your board is considering on a daily or monthly or however often they might have these meetings. And then to sort of bring the message home, there's all these other initiatives that need to be happening. And I've noticed specifically that there's been invigoration in these succession planning talks. Because what has happened, whether anybody would like to admit it or not, is that the gap between your, how can I call it, your less seasoned staff and your more seasoned staff sitting at ExCo level has now widened to the point where we now need to urgently talk about succession planning. And so for me, what I think is missing is it's great to have that succession plan, but we also need to fill that gap in the meantime. So that when the more seasoned guys step away, and you have the less seasoned guys stepping into those positions, that bridge that they have to sort of cross is not so wide anymore. And so there has to be that middle level. And I think all companies should be focusing there. So to summarize my answer to you, other than this conversation that I'm part of right now, from an industry and private company point of view, I'm not aware of any other initiatives, and I know Bukosi will be able to speak to that in more detail from an organization point of view. But within companies, I am aware that these conversations are happening, that there are initiatives being put into place. There are gaps, like I've just explained, and I think that those conversations should now become a little bit more holistic and start looking at how do we have, like, you have junior management, you have senior management, you have your deputy senior management, and then your exco, and then obviously your directors, and so on and so forth. It's your deputy senior management is where we need more focus on from a succession planning point of view. So, if any guys want to cover...
Can I also just probably comment that, but that's what I wanted to say.
I believe that from an industry, bodies, as well as companies' perspective, there is some stuff happening, but I don't believe that it's happening as quickly as it's supposed to be. And I believe that rather than being reactive, we ought to now start being proactive. The organizations that I've worked for, I've had the privilege of working with people who are close to retirement. And one of the things I always say is, you don't know that people are about to retire 2 months before they retire. You generally know it 3-4 years before. And the question is, what are we then doing, to your point, to narrow that gap down? People at the moment are becoming CEOs, MDs. They're sitting on Exco at a lot younger ages. Whilst that's great because it represents the demographics, because the average age on the continent is about 18, I think. No, that's the median. I've forgotten the average, but it's really small. So which means we have a lot of young people. But being catapulted and being accelerated like that means you are missing some of the things that someone who becomes an MD at 45 will probably have. And that's where issues of mentorship, succession planning then come, because it then really ultimately narrows that gap. So there is work happening, but I don't believe that we have enough collaboration at the moment for us to be able to move as a unified force. So others are on 15%, others on 10%, others are on 1%. And we want to be as close to each other as possible so that it becomes an industry norm and something that we really know that is part of a company's agenda item. You mentioned that it should be part of a board agenda. I had the same conversation actually with Junior Ngulube. He's retired now. He believes the same thing. I believe the same thing. Chris believes the same thing. I think all of us must believe the same thing as well.
Can I add on that? I think going back to your question around diversity, equity, inclusivity, I think for me, I believe there's always a plan. But the problem comes back to what we spoke before in terms of perception. Is there that perception that there is a plan and each organization or each association is going to execute on that plan? And for asking that question, I'm getting the impression that that perception is that there isn't a plan. Then the question is, are these conversations being had at a board level? And is that really the right level to be having this conversation? Because then with succession plans and the plan, that is your career that now other people are taking responsibility from. So I think for me is how do we manage that perception around, no, don't worry, there's a plan for you, to really now, okay, if there's a plan for me, why am I not involved in these conversations so I can drive it to where I want it to be?
Refilwe, WTW. My question is directed to all the panelists. What advice would you offer to a young professional who's very introverted but believes that, simply focusing on their job and being absolutely good at it will get them the recognition and the career advancement?
Whew, this is a good one. It's a very good one.
So I would say you need to, and it's not necessarily the full extent of my response, but the first thing that comes to mind is that you need to find an organization that will recognize your value, because you need solid rocks to make a business work. You can't have shining stars all around. Everybody wants to become the CEO of a company. It can't happen. So you need companies that will recognize your value and create opportunities for you to grow, which does not necessarily translate into you doing presentations in front of everybody. I think it's a very difficult thing to navigate from an employment point of view, but it is something that is necessary and absolutely worth it.
I can add, so I'm actually an introvert. And I think what I've learned along the way, like similar to company politics, is that there is a game to be played. And it's for you to decide, am I going to be a player in this game of politics and the work environment? And when you decide that you're going to play, it's how do you play on your own terms? And I think one thing that I've done to navigate that, get the right mentors and sponsors to advocate for you. Like I said, I sat on an member engagement board for 2 years without saying anything. And then the question now that you need to be asking yourself, why would the board allow me to stay on longer if I wasn't necessarily contributing? So you don't always have to speak to contribute, just find out how am I able to contribute, and then get those 2 or 3 people that are going to advocate on your behalf that know your talent, because you somewhat always need to make noise about this is what I'm doing. People often forget the good stuff, but then if you miss a report, that's what I'm going to be mentioning in today's meeting, that you missed the report yesterday. I'm not saying it's been 3 months or 4 months that you've done great work, but I know that you missed a report yesterday, and that's what I'm going to mention.
It's a fantastic question, and when I was younger, I wanted to make friends who are similar to me, outgoing, outspoken. You do learn stuff, but I found a lot of value from spending time with introverts. If you're able to tap into some of what's in their mind, you will be blown away. It happened to me about 7-8 years ago, and it's not deliberate. I do not shy away from introverts. When I get into a room, I will look for that one person who is sitting on a corner on their own. And every time I've been disappointed. So as an introvert, you have tons of value to give. You spoke about your work speaking for itself. It could be a cultural issue as well. And I speak that because I'm a black person. We were taught as we were growing up that when you do something amazing, keep it to yourself. The work will do the things for you. Culturally, it's correct. It doesn't work in business. And I'm not saying when you do something amazing, stand in front of a corridor and let everyone know. Sometimes it's speaking to your manager. This is what I've been able to do, and I was able to solve this. What's your thought? What's your input? So that people get to recognize you as well. Because there are a lot of people that I've worked with, really amazing. You can tell that this person really does everything that they can. They're exceptional. But when it's not known, sometimes you, at some point, end up feeling like people are not recognizing you. So you find ways and means to communicate the amazing things that you do within your organization, within business, as well as within the industry. I'm still learning that. I'm not saying it because I'm a master at it. It's a tug of war between what you grew up knowing and what the world of work really presents. So you must find ways of being able to communicate it, because sometimes by communicating it as well, you might find ways of bettering what you thought was a cool idea.
I think from my point of view, and everybody's sort of spoken about it right now, is so my mentor, she's an introvert, and she is the chief operating officer for one of the largest brokerages in SA. And she's amazing. and she's been able to position herself in a way that has allowed her to grow in her career quite organically. The way she's been able to do that, and I suppose this is my sort of advice to you, is get a mentor who's introverted and learn from them. Observe them, watch their game, watch how they play their game, and take that information, synthesize it, and make it your own. There's something else that the IIG does. It's the class off program, and I had the opportunity to sit in there. And Jenna and Linda, who are the ladies who sort of run the show, spoke about this pie chart where your development, your growth, your movement within any sort of corporate space is based on your performance, your image, and your exposure. But on this pie chart, performance and image only occupied half, whereas exposure occupied the other half altogether. And it took me a while to get to grips with this, because you cannot escape this convention no matter where you are in the world in any sort of business setting. It is something that is prevalent. It's a convention that exists across the world, that your growth within any organization is dependent on your exposure. People have to know what you are doing and what is the value that you are adding, so that they can take that into account when they're considering you for promotion, for another job, and so on and so forth. And so you have to find your unique way to demonstrate and communicate and let people know, this is what I'm doing for you. And you don't have to scream to do it. Extroverts are known for being loud and crazy and, just overbearing sometimes. But there's a these are things that I have been described as. but the point is that you don't need to be the loudest person in the room, the most articulate person in the room, the person who's standing on the tables or wearing the brightest color in the room in order to make an impact. You can be super powerful by just being quiet and by watching the game and by just letting people know what you are doing and how awesomely you are doing it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zima. I am a business development manager with Momentum Financial Planning. So we had a conversation regarding the role that learning institutions have in driving, obviously, the attraction of young people in the sector. So my question is for you, Bukosi. You spoke about, we spoke about the middle gap as well. And you just spoke about collaboration. So what work are you doing with INSETA, which is the Insurance Sector and Education Training Authority in South Africa? What are you doing to attract or to make available educational resources to the very young people that we speak about?
Firstly, I'll say thank you for that question, Zima. We're not doing enough, but we are doing something. We've got I'll speak from an IIG perspective, because that's where I am a lot more involved. With what we call the academic program. The academic program is targeted at people who hold a grade 12 certificate. We attract them into the industry. We give them, and I keep making this mistake, we don't give them, but they work for their NQF 5, RE5, they get mentorship. They are taught all the 4 Qs that you mentioned, EQ, IQ, Q, the other Q. And they also get exposure to the different parts of the industry. The challenge I think that we've had, and which is why the program is small, I think this year we have only 17 people. The idea is to really to blow it out of water, and we've had similar conversations actually with INSETA, where they were saying, how do we replicate the program that we have to the rest of the country? That was 2 years ago, and nothing much has happened regarding that. So it's something is happening. We'll be able to change 17 people's lives. But with all the money that we're paying through our what's the number on your payslip into the INSETA for a skill development perspective, I believe that we could do a lot more. And I think you've just sparked something in me for me to be able to pick up that conversation that we had 2 years ago. I'm only president for 1 year, but the development of the industry is something that I'll do for as long as I live. So thank you for that question, and we'll do a lot more.
Thanks, Bukosi. We have another question here.
Hi, everyone. I'll stand because I'm at the end of the room and I'm short. Balisa from ISB Optimus. My question deviates a little from the theme that we have on today, as in empowering and encouraging young people into entering the industry. My question is, say you have a 35-year-old male who is not an accountant, not really into the industry like that, maybe, I don't know what role I can put forward, maybe a product manager, right? And they want to join the industry. I think it's a little bit different from being an accountant because numbers are numbers, I believe, but to be a product manager, you need to know exactly what the industry entails and everything that goes on, right? But he's 35. He didn't start off like you on the panel who started off young. You didn't know that you'll be in the industry, but still you were, I'd like to say young, right? Do you think the industry is welcoming of such individuals who are 35, a product manager, worked in the automation industry? Do you think it's welcoming for someone to come in and potentially take a different road in terms of that career?
100%. In fact, the company that I work for, we recently were looking for a procurement manager and within the insurance space. And we appointed someone with a procurement qualification who did not come from the insurance space. And he has invigorated that function, invigorated it. He's done some things in the past, I think 3 or 4 months that the previous managers were not able to do. So 100%. I think it comes down to, I was just having this conversation just now, it doesn't come down to qualification anymore. It depends really on the hiring manager and what they are looking for. You get some sticky hiring managers, and perhaps there's a training issue there, the culture issue, and that needs to be rectified by the company. But there are the majority of the hiring managers who aren't looking for qualification only. We're looking for grit. We're looking for innovation. And to get innovation, like I said earlier on, you need a diversity of ideas, diversity of backgrounds. You want someone to be able to solve a problem. Sorry, I'm not crying. It's just my, it's just my eye. Yeah. It's the passion that's like, yeah. So to answer your question, in my opinion, my personal opinion, I think there's place for everybody within the insurance space. And provided the right opportunity comes around, they will find themselves placed like that in any sort of position.
All right, thank you, Chris. Oh.
You put an age of 35, but I know a company that's just hired someone who's 38.
Yeah.
And at 38, you've worked in a few roles outside the insurance industry, so it is welcoming. I also know a guy who has a degree in sports science, who's a client executive at the moment. But of course, our regulation wants you to have your RE5,
yeah.
You need to have a NQF5, 120 credits, and all those good things. And you're given time frames to be able to do that. And I believe that we are no longer at a point where, because in 19 all along, like I said, and this still happens in the continent, engineer, you die in engineer. Insurance, you die in insurance. But the truth of the matter is today, when you have the right qualities, you spoke about grit. There's lots of other cool things that people will be looking for.
Yes, yeah.
You will be able to get into the industry and not just thrive, but really flourish into it.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone else have okay. 2 questions that side? Is it one question or two? Are you representing each other? Okay.
Thank you. So my question, oh sorry, apologies, Lerato Tlale from Sasria. So in our organization, we have a fairly young workforce, right? You spoke a lot around succession planning and having that wealth of knowledge from like your older generation. We don't have that advantage where we're sitting. So I just wanted to find out from the panelist, is there a knowledge hub somewhere where the wealth of knowledge that you've discussed, the mentors that you've engaged with, people that have sort of showed you the ropes across the industry, that we can sort of tap into, where if you have like an introvert that's sitting at the corner to say, look, I'm really passionate about this career, but there's ISA, there's IIG, there's this, there's that, so many points of contact where I can get information. But is there one point where I can go and say, okay, fine, this is typically what an insurance career looks like for an individual that studied A, B, or C, or if I want to focus in reinsurance, or I want to move into the claim space, that I could potentially read into, or that we could recommend from a talent perspective? Because you know, the youngsters nowadays, it's around, you know, social media, you know, what's quick, what's accessible, can at a glance, can I see what I can do, and we move. So is there something at the moment where they can sort of tap into as a repository?
I mean, not one repository. If I use myself as an example, because I'm my best reference for it, very early on in my career, I identified certain people that had qualities that were attractive to me, not like in a relationship sort of sense, but like attractive, you know? And these were qualities that I thought to myself that, look, I want to connect to this person and maybe get into some sort of relationship with them, professional relationship. I should have corrected that. Get into some sort of professional relationship with them, a mentorship sort of, or coaching sort of relationship. And I had to put my ego aside and message them. Of the probably 8 or 9 people I messaged, like 3 responded. And those 3 I still keep in contact with. And it's so interesting that people do want to help. And the people who didn't respond, I don't hold it against them. They did eventually respond. They are busy people. Some of the people you might want to connect with are like chief something of somewhere. And they are just like in meetings all their lives. You know, so there's also a level of understanding from your side. You go in with no expectations, and if that person doesn't respond to you, don't hate them. You have to sort of understand their circumstances, their priorities might be not aligned to your request at that point in time. So you speak to those people, and that's how you sort of get mentors and get coaches and what have you. You have to, and I've said it earlier on, and I've said this to my team, Vukosi, as well, is you have to take hold of that driver's wheel of your career. If you're not getting what you want where you are currently, try and look outward to see where you can get that support, that coaching. But the first hurdle is to get over yourself and actually send that message. And trust me, when I sent that first message, I read it over and over and over again. Oh, I'm gonna sound too needy, let me just take that out. Oh, no, they're gonna think I'm like, I'm weak, and those things are not true. Those are all your brain. I spoke about it earlier on, your negative bias trying to protect you from embarrassment, perceived embarrassment, or discomfort. But so you have to push past that and find out. In terms of knowledge bases and how to handle claims and what have you, I mean, we spoke about the claims forum, and then we're still in the beginning stages of me trying to get that rolling. But you can also start having that internally. Small forum between your colleagues. Okay, guys, we have these claims. These are the issues and the policies. How do we get around these? Can we figure out how to sort this out as a team? And then that becomes a convention, which can then become a policy, which can then help people who come after you. A young workforce is not a disadvantage. If anything, it's an advantage. And I spoke about it earlier on about diversity, like this innovation that can come from that. And then the biggest repository in the world, the internet. Google, it's the best repository in the world. You get a lot of information on there. Last but not least, and going back to messaging people, if you guys are looking for someone to help you from a technical standpoint, you just literally have to search claims expert on LinkedIn. There'll be a whole list there, and you'll be spoiled for choice. You go through everybody's profiles, you see who actually you guys want to connect with, do a first meeting. The second meeting can be a presentation. Start looking for those opportunities by yourselves as well.
Can I also just add to that? So when I was at 2 or so years ago, I was writing my fellowship exam. So that was in the short-term space. And I think in terms of information and repository, similar to what you're somewhat asking now, advice that I got is that the brokers have some nice stuff on their website. So brokers, and then your consulting firms, your consulting and audit firms. And that is probably where, like when you say it's the internet, that's where I think those are the two, I guess, places to go to. And then post that now comes back to what you're saying, the curiosity in terms of now that this broker is talking about catastrophe, how does it impact a reinsurer? Now you're going to the reinsurance website. And I think in terms of reaching out to people, I think one easy way is you have 4 or 5 people sitting here. It's much easier now to say, Baba, look, can I please have your numbers? Because I think also in terms of that, the fact that we are here today means that we are the people that are somewhat willing to be here. As much as most people would say I don't have time, it's not necessarily time, it's what are you passionate about? And you also want someone who's passionate, because then the mentor-mentee relationship, it's 2 ways. I feel like as a mentor, you probably learn a lot more than being a mentee. And I think probably post that in this whole journey, something that I also did, like now as yourself, start writing articles as well. Because if you do articles and you do presentations, you're also learning so that you can also write that article, put something together, and then also now speaks to value, adding value to the industry just beyond what you've learned.
What was my question? Okay. I think I've forgotten. But anyway, the panel, well, thank you for today. This was really grateful. I mean, we are grateful. This was wonderful. I mean, I've never even heard of Claims Forum up until today, yet I'm in insurance. So that should also say that chances are there are a whole lot of other people who don't even know of this wonderful organizations of yours. So that's something to think about. And my name is Serena Sasria. I'm from Sasria. So we have embarked on a journey to try and get Sasria out there in the market. And we have approached organizations such as SETAP. We've approached organizations such as Tutukas, your financial or insurances, or rather insurance-aligned organizations, because we want people to join the insurance industry. But we obviously getting to, like, there are blockages, if I could call them that, because your actuarials, when they graduate, they want to join financial sectors. Nobody wants to come to insurance. We looked at having chartered accountants, but all of them want to go into other sectors except for insurance. So I guess I'm going to pick your brain in this one to say, why insurance? If you're speaking to a graduate, a startup graduate, or somebody who just graduated in actuarials, or somebody who's just graduated as a chartered accountant, why not Deloitte? Why do we want them to come to insurance industry? What would your advice be?
I can probably start with that one. So I think from my personal journey speaks to mentorship. So they got me young. So my second year, I started doing vacation work at Munich Re. And then that exposes me to the company and to the organization. So a few years there, I actually jumped ship to the consulting side and jumped back for a reason that the insurance space is quite vast. It gives a lot of opportunities. And probably what I'm doing beyond that is I'm doing the same for students. So I do use my company's facilities to bring students in, probably twice a year from the various universities. And luckily, we have Sumi here from our HR team, and they literally sit with each student and give a mock interview. Because then now the issue is, from a mindset perspective, as a student, you now know I'm going into this building. I already met the HR people, I already met the people there. And even if you don't go to our organization, we are marketing that this is, you have this image of what an insurance person is. It's not some vague, distant idea. And it really speaks to that, like what you're saying, what exactly are we doing that is tangible to give students and people exposure to the industry, that they know, if I'm going into this, this is what it looks like. These people are willing to sit with me, do a mock interview without necessarily expecting anything in return. But then from the industry perspective, these are some of the benefits that we gain from it.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any more questions? All right, no. Any last words from your side? None. Okay, yes. Yes, Baba.
Probably someone else needs to close after me, because I'm going to be one of those controversial people. So, Bukosi, please make sure that you make us feel good after this. So I think probably from my side, every time I do a talk or presentation, now the question becomes, after we've sat here, where to from here? We've been marketing, we want to attract young students or young people to the insurance industry. But then what does it mean for organizations? What does it mean for our own companies? If now tomorrow we have 100 students saying, oh, that was fantastic, I want to join the insurance industry. Do we have the space and the capacity to welcome them into our organization? So I think for me, that's a open-ended question that I'd want us to leave with in terms of this conversation. Like, as much as we want them to be attracted, do we have the capacity to absorb them into our organization? Do we have the capacity to train them to be leaders one day? Or are we taking them in, or is there really that barrier of entry? And what does it really mean for us to have such platforms and not necessarily be able to take them to the next CEO or the next leader or whatever it may be that they may want?
What I'm going to say is, it's a great way to end.
It's the where to from here and what now. But I really hope that everyone enjoyed this and it was informative and that you were kept engaged the whole time. I think I'll probably give it to the ISA to share with us what they've got for us, sushi, a buffet of oysters and things like that. But from our side and the panelists, I think thank you so much, guys, for being here. It was fun, and thank you.
Great, great, great. What a wonderful session. What a wonderful session indeed. Thank you very much, Ayanda, for such an engaging and thought-provoking session. We really thank you as the ISA. To the panelists, thank you for the insights. I think we all have picked up some nuggets, as I said, some gold nuggets. There were quite a number of ideas that were bantered around here in how we could here sort of make that change or be the catalyst of that change in the industry and make sure that we make space for those young, bright minds that are waiting for those opportunities. It is us here who have to suggest and influence that change. But I picked up one or two things that really got me thinking. One of them being that I think Bukosi and the panelists here mentioned the gap that exists between, the young entrants into the insurance industry versus those who are established already in, and there's just that gap that cannot be closed. And I think I had a sideline conversation with one of the members, and the view was maybe we need a 2.1 of this session where we have, sort of a aging workforce to look back and give the same feedback from their perspective, and let's hear and see. Maybe the solutions are right there. It's easy to talk, but when you put these things into practice, it tend to be something else. And also the mention of a silver bullet is there, but it's unique by organization. Do your best wherever you are as an organization to make that change. So we thank you a lot. Really valuable insights, big learnings, and we appreciate all of you. I appreciate you for joining the session. We'll hope to see you soon. Let's continue with the conversations. That is really how we get to transform the industry. And thank you for the questions that have been posed here. They are really thought-provoking. I didn't look at some of these things the way that you do, and that's what the conversations are meant to spark. question mark that comes. We may not have the solution right now, but I promise you it will be there. As you continue with your business, remember those young ones. The future is here. Technology is moving at rapid speed. And those younglings, as you may think that when they are on YouTube or any other, platform, and I want to talk about platforms that we don't normally use for business, like TikTok. The future might just be lying there. Maybe we are not the target market. And those are the ones that are coming to transform and take us to the next level. So we just need to be mindful, bring them on as much as sometimes it can be a bit, and that's the gap again. So let's look out for that. So thank you very much, everybody. I have been reliably told that there's some nibbles here. So we can obviously have nibbles as we wrap up and conversations can continue to flow. I'm sure those who didn't get to ask questions can interact with some of the panelists that are here whilst we have in nibbles. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody. Nongeba and team from the ISA, thank you for organizing the session. Super well done. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day further.